Welcome, everybody, to the Reco12 Ask It Basket. About a month and a half ago, in the end of July, Robert Pardon and I sat down and did this for the first time and had a really great experience with it. And as he and I discussed a couple of times over this last month, we wanted to do a follow-up with it because it was just such a good experience, yes, for us, and we hope it was a good experience for you out there. And Robert said, hey, you know what? I've got a friend, Michelle, that I think would be a great person to bring in and have a little bit more of a roundtable, a back and forth type situation. So I've got Michelle here with us also, along with Robert. So first I'm going to actually, let's start off with Michelle, since you're the newcomer. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself really quick?
I would love to. My name is Michelle. I'm an alcoholic and I'm also an addict. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and have been in the rooms and been in recovery of Alcoholics Anonymous since my early 20s. I'm now in my 40s. We don't have to judge me off of that. Just kidding. But I've identified with being a self-harmer all my life. A female coming from trauma and from hard situations. I know what it's like to relate in the struggle of understanding who and what God is, or a higher power is. Identify with, definitely, I am an alcoholic, but I've also struggled with other areas of my life and overdoing anything that can be positive and also negative and harming to my life. I have a huge passion for walking life with women who are just seeking something different. And the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous have brought me a life of recovery, a life as a single mom, and a life hand in hand with other men and women who are like-minded like me that I just could not be more thankful for.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Michelle. And I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better as we have these conversations. And we'll, if you would like, we can set things up so that people can get in contact with you if they would like to follow up with some things, and they can do that through the Reco12 thing. Robert, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
I never miss an opportunity, that's for sure. My name is Robert. I am a recovered alcoholic. And Justin and I have been friends for quite some time, and my life is better as a direct result of being Justin's friend. And we came to know each other, and then we had an opportunity I was coaching and Justin was sponsoring an individual. Sadly, this person did not stay sober. However, the 12-step doesn't require someone to stay sober. We just have to try to carry the message. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful for Justin is that that's exactly what he did. I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous via Gamblers Anonymous back in 1986, and my sobriety date is April 25th, 1986. And by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, coming from Las Vegas, gambling, drugs, alcohol, they have free buffets. So bulimia and compulsive overeating were tied into that. And they have strip clubs like no other. So the sexual addiction, everything just clung to me as if it was natural, but it was killing me at the same time. And so when I got sober back in 1986, little by little and one by one, these other dependencies came to drop away. And now I'm happy, I'm joyous, and I'm free. And I think this is my fourth time on Reco12, and I could not be more excited. My friend Michelle and I, we do a lot together in treatment, and her goal is my goal, and that is to help others to become well as we understand wellness and recovery. So it's great to be here, Justin. And I just love you very much. And I love your mission. I love Reco12 and everything that you do to promote recovery, not just from SA standpoint, but NA, OA, GA, you name it, EA, AA. There's not an A out there that you don't touch. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much, Robert. I sure love you too, and appreciate our friendship and this relationship that has blossomed as we've gotten to know each other over the years. And as real quick, I recognized I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Justin. I'm a son of an all-powerful, all-loving God. I am a recovering addict. I came into the rooms through my sexual addiction about 12 years ago. Yeah, about 12 years ago when I first, 11 years ago when I first came into the rooms. And I've learned all sorts of things about myself, found additional, like Robert said, additional ways of filling that God-sized hole that I tried to fill with sex, that I tried to fill with food, that I try to fill with all sorts of character defects, along with any other substance that I can find that seems to work for me at the moment. And I'm grateful to be living in this beautiful state of recovery that there is. And It's not always a clean, beautiful, happy, joyous skipping through the park. Sometimes there's certain trials and low spots that come along, but I'm grateful for these principles of recovery. All right, let's get into the Ask It basket here. As we introduced this about a month and a half ago, what we're doing is we're taking questions that have been posed to Robert, to Michelle, to me in recovery, and just throwing some experience, strength, and hope at them. And I've got a list of several that we started on last time, and several more that we've added to this list. And I'm just going to start asking some questions, and we'll have kind of a roundtable discussion about this, and we'll see where this goes over the next hour or so as we have this conversation. All right, I'm going to start off with a question that is something that I have a little bit of a different perspective on this, but I'm going to come in at it and ask you guys this question. The first one that I have here is, how would I work the 12 steps if I am an atheist and I have zero belief that there is a God? How would you like to start addressing that?
Michelle?
I'll go first. Just a little bit of my background, the way that I grew up and the environment that I was in, religion. I'm going to kind of put that in quotations as I say that. My hands are up, right? Religion. One of the things that really deterred me and kept me sick for quite some time, and pushed the idea of the 12 steps of recovery out of my life was that exactly, of God. And I'm not sure that I would have defined myself as an atheist. I don't know. I also know that when I came into the rooms, I'm so grateful for the people that have gone before me, because often when I read the 12 steps on the wall, when I read the first 164 pages of the big book, before really working side by side with other women and people that were in long-term recovery, I could only come up with my own conceptions of what the 12 steps were, of what they were saying when I had to have a higher power or a God of my understanding meant. And the truth is, I was a scared little girl in a big girl body, and I had a lot of little girl thinking and little girl wounding in a big girl life, and had no idea how to mesh really what the 12 steps were saying to me, what recovery really would give me in my life. I was so blinded and shut off to the idea because I didn't want religion. And at the time, I wasn't open to the idea of God in my life. And so I really love when we come into recovery with wounds that can be mended, right? I do believe that I have a spiritual malady. There is something wrong. I have a hole within my heart and my soul, and there is only one way that can be fixed. And I've learned in my own experience of trying everything else other than God or a higher power, right? On Michelle's self-will, I have given it every good shot that I can at what that means, and I was defeated. And it wasn't until I really had hit a place of defeat and understood, right? Drugs and alcohol were only a symptom of my problem, my shopping addiction, my self-harming mechanisms, undereating, overeating, over-exercising, under-exercising. Right? There's not a group I can't go to. So I felt like I could go to a group and I wanted to fit, but I didn't know how. And that is really what held me back. And until I really understood that my core problem is that I'm selfish and self-centered, everything that I was doing, even with all good intention, would go sideways, and I didn't understand why. And that's because I was trying to do it myself. Always. At some point, I would pull back. I wanted to trust in something better than me. I knew that what I had tried wasn't working. Yet that conception of I have to give it to the God that I was raised with, or the God that you believe, or the God that you believe, I didn't know how to do that. And so my best recommendation is oftentimes, like how we started this with the set aside prayer. I was willing to read the first 164 pages and I believed them. And I was willing to write down the third step prayer. I was willing to say, I realize I am selfish and self-centered to my core, that everything that I have tried up until this point has not worked, and I need a different solution. And I came to the understanding that as I put action I put faith in another woman, I put faith in the program, I put faith that there had to be some kind of answer. And I wanted that. And when I followed the suggestions and I worked the steps in my life, it became undoubtedly true to me. There is something so much greater than me. I could finally see and feel and experience that God-sized hole that was there. And I finally knew what it meant to invite something in, that redemption would really happen for me in my life. And the God of my understanding, the higher power that I live with, is mine. It's my experience. I can't give anyone my experience. I can help guide you to have your own. And I think that that is the coolest part of the 12 steps, that your journey gets to be yours and you'll be met exactly where you need to be met. And your life will be exactly what it needs to be. Just have the faith that the work of the program will show you really what that means for you.
Thank you for walking through that. I really appreciate that, Michelle. What's your take on this, Robert?
The least of my problems is I don't believe in God. And fortunately, the second step, after I address my addiction that's killing me, that's causing my divorces, my inability to pay rent, and everything else that comes as a direct result of my core addiction, the least of my problems is whether or not I believe in a God. However, that needs to be addressed somewhere along the way. I completely agree with Michelle that and you that we do suffer from a spiritual malady, and only a spiritual solution can fix that. The problem with being an atheist is that they put their mind over something they can see over something they can't, and that's the challenge. So I would suggest that the least of a person's problems is whether or not they believe or don't believe. I've known people who took a while to believe in anything, and yet they still got clean and sober because they understood how much their sexual addiction, their gambling addiction, their cocaine, their drinking, whatever it was, their anorexia, their bulimia, overeating, you name it, whatever A is out there. That's what was the problem. Address that first, and you can get sober and clean and be an atheist the rest of your life. I don't recommend it, but you can. AA is not the only way. SAEA, NA is not the only way. It's the way that we have chosen. But if you want to be an atheist and don't drink and don't use and don't act out, hey, knock yourself out. I got no problem against that. I just don't want you to die or be killed by a treatable condition. And so my advice to an atheist would be get clean, get sober first, and then we'll deal with that. Because what happens when we get clean and sober, we begin to be open-minded in ways we used to be closed-minded. And once again, Michelle had said, it's selflessness and self-centeredness. Once I can begin to see past me, then I can see something else. But as long as I'm the solution while I'm the problem, there's going to be conflict.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm going to jump in here and share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope on this also, because this is a topic that, the line in the big book reads, to one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, a spiritual experience. I have added in the word for myself, or religionist. I thought for sure that my way of understanding God was the true way my whole life. And yet I couldn't get sober. And yet I was still a disaster. I've heard people say most people don't come into the rooms of recovery seeking God. They come in trying to find power, trying to find power. In fact, just a couple of paragraphs later in the big book, page 45, lack of power. That was our dilemma. I didn't have the power to stop, right? And I think when I came into the rooms, I initially came in to try and become worthy for this God that I had in my mind that wouldn't even pay attention to me if I wasn't perfect and worthy and everything like that. And that killed me. That killed me. That thought, this religionist thought that I had to be perfect to approach a power greater than myself, to approach God. And as I walked through the steps and over time, I came to realize that my perception of God, I had to set that aside. And I actually had, this was the terminology I used. I had to fire the God of my understanding and start from scratch, from square one. And it was scary. It was really scary. But to me, that was every bit as crippling as somebody who says, there is no God. I cannot believe that there is some power out there that is benevolent, loving, or controls the universe, whatever that is. And to me, that stumbling block was just as massive. So that's kind of where I come from that. And it's been a really powerful shift of perception in my own life. Is there anything else on this topic before we go into another?
Yeah, you brought up a couple things that are so important. The difference between, okay, in the doctor's opinion, because you brought up the big book, doctor's opinion is we have to experience a psychic change that is in the mind. So that should feed into an atheist who thinks their mind, like Freudian or Adler, the mind controls. Well, Einstein said we can't change with the thinking that got us into the problem. We can't come into the solution with the same thinking. So we have to experience a psychic change. One of the things you read from page 45 of the big book is a spiritual experience. There's a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening happens in a vacuum. It happens in an instant. A spiritual experience happens over the time that you were discussing. So give yourself time. The last thing you have to worry about is what you believe, how you believe, where you put your belief. Just get clean, just get sober first, and then worry about that. Don't put the cart before the horse and say the cart doesn't work.
Beautiful. Anything else you have to say on that, Michelle?
I think Robert and I are saying very much the same thing in those last comments that he made, right? The verbiage is a little bit different, but that is my answer to that is trust the process and give yourself time. That too, right? You have to have enough willingness, at least in the beginning, to say maybe all of how I think might not be true. Even if there's just the slightest maybe, you can be an atheist and you can be firm on some of those beliefs, but just with a little hint of maybe this could show me something different, possibly, for time to reveal what those, right, a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening is, which is what I was saying, Nate, that once I was willing to put in the work, take suggestions that I thought were very silly prior. Everything I thought would not be true for me. I remember coming into Alcoholics Anonymous in my early 20s, and they would read out of the big book, and I would hear things like jail, institutions, and death. And my very exact thoughts were, well, that's dramatic, sucks for you, but not for me. And then I remember being back in those same rooms, defeated like never before in my 30s. And it's finally sticking with me, jails, institutions, death, those things that I so quickly thought that's dramatic and that will never be my life was more than my life. It had been my life and many, many of times at that point up until then. And so if you just have that hint of maybe I don't know exactly all of it and try and take some suggestions, for me, that's where the evolution of a different way of thinking and a different experience happened for me.
Love that. And we're bringing this into the honesty, the open-mindedness, the willingness that is necessary for us to recover. I really appreciate that. I want to jump now to something that Michelle said in her initial comments there. You said something to the effect of you had little girl wounding in a big girl life. And I think that as I look back at my own life, I can see that same thing. I had little boy wounding that was really tripping me up in my big boy life, and maybe even continues to do so. Michelle, let's start with you. How did you address that, and how do you address that through the steps of recovery in working these processes, and how can other people look at doing those, addressing those things also?
It starts with a shift in my thinking, for sure, when I would go into any of the rooms of a 12-step program, but specifically Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where I started first, my judgments held me back. Again, my way of thinking, I'm right, you're wrong. You don't understand me. You will never know what I come from. You don't understand my pain. I will not trust you with my pain. I will not trust you with my experience. Why do you want to know those things about me? What will you do with them? That is all little girl wounding that I've carried into my big girl life. I came up, I, the beliefs that I took on as a little girl were, I'm not enough, no matter how hard I try, it is never going to be enough, that I'm only worth certain things. And that's all. That is all I will ever be worth. And I adapted from that way of thinking and beliefs, patterns in my life. There was pain that was happening to me and around me I could not control. And I adapted physical ways, mental ways, and emotional ways of coping that I took on the belief I'll just manage the pain. I will just control when it starts. I will control when it stops. So that it didn't really matter really still what happened to me or around me. I just got immersed in what I was doing. And I think those are the roots of my selfishness and self-centeredness, right? I would come into the rooms and they would say, you don't have the capability to be honest with yourself. And I would say, you have no idea. You don't know me. Or you're selfish and self-centered to your core. And I'm like, you don't know me. Because there's parts of my heart that love others big. And I've done good things. And right, I could only see a certain way. My little girl goggles kept me from putting on big girl glasses. And the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I walk life with people who have lives that I admire. I used to come into the rooms and my judgments would say, oh my gosh, you've been here for 25, 30 years and you're still in the same meeting, drinking coffee and saying the same things. And man, how much of that I missed of you have been here for 30 years and you have grandchildren and a wife and you graduated college and you, right? Someone who I didn't pay attention to where they came from. I didn't even listen, right? They say pay attention to the similarities. And all I could see was these superficial judgments of, do you have the things I want? Do you have the husband like I think he should look? Or and again, those are little girl glasses instead of big girl binoculars that can see this world of redemption, hope, life, love. And I walk hand in hand with people who have lives now that I want. I have failed as a mom. Help me be a better mom. How did you make it through the shame of feeling like I have messed up for too long and too far, and I can't get those relationships back? Yet you have. You have walked through, you have survived medical things. Cancer is a part of my story and multiple times. How did you make it through these massive things or loss, death of children, death of husbands, how did you do that and make it through it sober? Because underneath, right, everything that's superficial, I thought those were the answers because my little girl thought that's how we're going to fill that God-sized hole. So I used people, places, and things all my life. And I've proven I can sustain on people, places, and things for a really long time, as long as they keep changing and becoming bigger and getting more and more and more until people and places or things are not enough. And so I just reach for people who have time in recovery, who live, and not just time in sobriety. There's a difference to me in people who live in recovery, and you can see light in their eyes. You can hear hope in their voice. You can, when you spend time with them and ask questions about really, where do you come from? Really, what matters to you? You know, how did you get to where you are? And they have these life-giving responses of, I know what it's like to live hell on earth. and now to be in like a place of heaven where I used to think that was a destination. And I've had people show me, you already know what it's like to live hell on earth and you don't want to be there anymore. Is there hope for you to have any idea of what life would be good here on earth right now, right in this moment? And I just cling to that.
Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. I love several of the imagery things you put in there were just really powerful to me, and I'm going to come back to a couple of them I think here as we continue this conversation. But Robert, I'd like to hear your take on this.
I have to go after that.
Good luck.
I just could listen. Michelle and I do so much together, and just hearing her just reiterates all of that. You know, I grew up thinking I wasn't enough. There was nothing I could do to feel good about who I was. And when I discovered drinking at 14 and Playboy magazines, man, I didn't have to be me anymore. I could have this out of body experience. I could be with these girls I was never going to meet, and I could be this person I was never going to become. And when you're raised, saying, don't let Bobby touch it because he breaks everything he touches. And you wet the bed till you're 11 and you're just called piss pot and all sorts, and you're afraid to have your friends over because they'll smell your bedroom and just things you believe you are what you're told. And I spent years drowning from that pain. I tell people a lot, I came from nothing, I was nothing, and I was always going to be a nothing. But when I drank and I drugged and I found that magic combination, I became an almost. So I didn't have to kill myself because being an almost was as good as I was ever going to become. And through marriages, I was a high school dropout. I would later go back to college and get my degree, and I was on president's list with straight A's. I found out I was really smart. I found out that everything that was told to me was a lie, but I had to stop escaping first. I believed that the people who were telling me these things didn't know who I was and what I was capable of being. I had some people sometimes tell me, why are you always in trouble? Do you know how amazing you are? And I could never believe them because the voices in my head that told me I was nothing, that I was never going to be anything, they become your own voice. You pick up where they left off because they can't be wrong. They're supposed to love you. They're supposed to nurture you. They're the ones who care for you more than everything or anything. And yet you adopt the persona that they leave you with, and you carry it on. So I was that child. I was 10, I was 9, I was 8 years old in a 26-year-old body, in a 30-year-old body. And so life got so painful for me that I couldn't drink anymore to be an almost. And the only place for me, and there wasn't enough strip clubs, there wasn't enough drugs, there wasn't enough gambling that could make my feel good anymore. And I had to get sober in order to survive. And so when you talk about a little boy living in a big guy body, I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. I'm a big guy. And yet there was that child in me that just wanted to break free and say, stop lying to me. And I've learned the truth, and I love the truth much more than I love the lie.
That's beautiful, Robert. And I want to dig there just a little bit. You said, I was a nobody. I came from nothing and was nothing. And then you became an almost. And then you just at the end there, you referenced, hey, I love who I am today. Who are you today, Robert, in recovery? And what does that development look like into who you are today?
Well, I am a person of value. I'm a person that people, they're excited when I show up. Well, most of them are. And I have people I've always wanted to give, but I didn't think I had anything to give. I didn't have anything to offer. Now I've learned the truth about me, and I am capable. I can fix things. Every now and then I break something, that's okay. Um, but I enjoy life. I enjoy, people often talk about being afraid or why they recover or why they stay recovered. And, the least of my concerns is going back and acting out and drinking and using. I stay in this life because I love getting back. Let me share an experience with you. And I was telling this to Michelle and one of my sponsees. I was at a treatment center, this treatment center I was at last week. And and I and I went to this person that I saw emptying the trash. And I recognized this person from a meeting I was speaking at the previous day at this treatment center. And this person said to me, I was going to leave, and then you showed up, and I decided to stay. And then they said, I'd like you to meet my significant other. I'd like you to meet my children. Thank you for reminding me what's important. And you don't get that experience unless you're a person of value, unless you're somebody who brings something to the table. So over the years, I've gotten evidence of that being a lie. I do have value. I am somebody. I bring something to the table. And that's one thing, and I'll close with this, because my mission in recovery is to find newcomers. It's one of the reasons Michelle and I go into treatment centers, because we want to help individuals find the power to uncover the lie about them, to discover the truth about them and about what they bring to the table. Because as soon as you introduce someone to power they already have, just get out of their way. And everyone in recovery should live to experience that.
Well, that's beautiful. So Robert, you just talked about, people you run into in these treatment centers who say, hey, I want to introduce you to my wife, to my kids. Michelle, you talked in your introduction that a single mother, raising a child as a single mother. And in the circles that I am in, so many people, so I'm a sex addict, and as a sex addict, people who have families who come out as, hey, I'm a sex addict and I have these things, many times the spouse will say, we're going to hide that. We're not going to tell the kids anything about it. It's just going to be our little secret, and you're going to get better and we're going to move on with life. One of the questions I have is, what is your journey like with your children? How has that gone in recovery, and is that approach that I just mentioned that so many people that I know approach this with appropriate? What are your thoughts on that? Let's start with you, Michelle, as you said you raised a child in recovery as a single mother.
I'm laughing. Sometimes I think I've lived like 10 lives in one. If anyone can relate to that. I can answer this question in many different ways because I've tried it. As I stated, I've tried many different avenues. And I was first introduced to recovery in my early 20s. I was a single mom my son was 4 when I first was introduced to AA and a 12-step program. My son's experience, my son is 21 now. So in his lifetime and in his experience, he has experienced all of my tries with me, and he has seen each form of me. My daughter has had a different experience and a completely different mom than my son did. And that's also something I'm learning how to navigate in recovery. It's one of the things that I ask for the most help and guidance around, because not only am I parenting a boy and a girl in very different aged times, they have had a very different mom and they experience very different things. And my glasses are very different than theirs. And so the shame that I felt as a mom coming in to Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine was my drug of choice. Leading up into finding drugs and alcohol, I had tried every form of self-harming as my coping mechanisms. I started with pulling my hair out, then I cut, I underate, I overate, I used relationships, I used sex, I used work, I used theft, so I had a shoplifting addiction. I found a ton of ways to cope that I held massive forms of shame around because I hid all of it. I lied and I hid all of it. And the environment that I was in as a little girl gave me some tools. And I learned it doesn't matter what's happening behind closed doors and it doesn't matter what's happening inside. All that matters is what the world thinks. And I know how to put on a really good mask, and I can make it look really, really pretty. And really, I'm dead inside. I have that feeling of, I relate that I'm an alcoholic. I seek an elusive, the big book says, an alcoholic is someone who seeks an elusive feeling outside of themselves. And from as long as I can remember, going back to 3, I have wanted to do anything to not feel who and what I am. I don't want to be Michelle. And so that bled into every part of me being a parent. And the thought of one ever telling anyone some of the things that I had done as a mom, that part of inventory, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The 2 thoughts that went through my head is, no, he already doesn't remember what I've done. That's what I told myself. and I hated myself for the things I had done as a mom. And I knew that if I ever told anyone, not only could I go to federal prison, I would lose him. And the one thing that I have clung to in my journey of getting up and falling down and getting up and falling down, I fiercely love my children. And I needed some help to honor my love for my children is deep. So admitting that I'm selfish and self-centered to my core fought against every part of me that wanted to be a good mom and be a good parent, because I didn't know how to conceptualize I'm selfish and self-centered to my core and I'm good. I couldn't be both, right? I'm an absolutist, all or nothing. So you're either the perfect mom or you're horrible. And I felt like I believed I was horrible. And so recovery has given me tools to be a mom. The woman that I am today, the mother I am today, can't stand. She doesn't, I mean, there's no one that I've ever been that doesn't hold a candle to the woman I am today. And I never thought that I would be a mom like I am. I struggle with connecting. I struggle with affection. I struggle with putting myself in their little shoes because my little shoes are broken, right? Like that is tainted for me. And the 12 steps have given me not just redemption in my life, it healed parts of me that I believe to my core that cannot be fixed. I have done everything. I have tried every way. I'm never going to be that kind of mom. I messed up too big. I've ruined them. They hate me. They don't want, and there's my selfishness and self-centered. All the big book says we have all good intentions and yet things don't work. And really underneath that, right, is my want, my good want of I want to be a good mom, right? I do. But out of a place of wounding, I didn't know how to how do I separate me from them? How do I be a good mom? Well, Michelle, you need some other women who can hold you. And when it's time to say, I love them, I hate them, I don't know why, I do, I don't, I do all of that over here. I do that in recovery. I do that with people who understand me. And I now have tools to go back to them and allow them to have their own experiences. My son deserved the right to say, my son has never disrespected me in all of his life, not even one time. And yet, if there's one person that could look at me and say, Michelle, you're trash, right? You failed me, it would be him, and he hasn't. And yet he needed to know when it was time for him to take space, to put up boundaries, anything that my children need to say in their own experience, to say, you hurt me, you left me, those things are true. They deserved a better mom in certain areas, they did. And all I need to do, and what a living amends has shown me, really a true amends, it is not me saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry is for me. I want to know that you forgive me. We're going to be okay. Tell me I'm a good mom. Selfish and self-centered to my core. if I lay that down and I really learn how to love them and see them, I am big enough to hold. I did those things. And you know what? You deserved a mom that was different. You deserved a mom that showed up different. I'm here today and I honor every bit of what that was. And today I know that I love you bigger and better than ever. And I am here today with open arms. I would love to keep getting to know you. I would love, like they see in my willingness to live my life different no matter what. My sobriety is no longer based on me just wanting to be a good mom because that wasn't enough. I've learned to love Michelle and to want a good life for Michelle, and that bleeds into my children. And my children want me to be their mom and to be a part of their life. It has allowed me to be the parent I never thought I could. I connect, I love on them, I hear them, I see them. The best and most fruitful relationships we'll ever have in our life will have the hardest conversations and some of the deepest scars and wounds of our heart. That is where I believe how the spiritual life comes in. It is something bigger and greater than me that does something for me I couldn't do for myself. I couldn't be the mom I wanted to, but the 12 steps have shown me I can be the mom I want to be today. And I hand that over. It is not because of me. It is because of God today that I get another shot and that I have any clue how to even try how to do that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Man, powerful, powerful. Robert, you and I have talked a few times about miracles in connection with your children. Why don't you share a little bit of your experience on this and the miracles of your life and in recovery with your own family and children?
Thank you very much. If there's anything that has kept me on my knees, it's with my two daughters that I walked out on at the height of my addiction. And even though they've forgiven me and God's forgiven me, I'm not sure how much I've forgiven me. That's one area in my life that I still work on. Having said that, I contacted my daughters and let them know I'm going to be in Southern California speaking this last week. And so driving back to Las Vegas, I messaged them and I said, hey, I'm going to be coming back. Maybe we could have lunch. And my oldest daughter, who I think I wounded the most, got back to me first, said, Dad, whatever you want, whatever you do, it's Evan's birthday. He's my 9-year-old grandson. And we'd love to have lunch with you. And I sent her a message after we had lunch. And this is all I'll say because I can't talk about these girls without crying, because they exemplify forgiveness. And if anyone should never forgive me, it was them. If there was anyone who was ever truly victims of my addiction, it's them. And I wrote Kathleen and I said, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to have lunch with me. I really enjoyed the time I spent with you and Evan. It means more to me than I can express. And you know what she did? She hearted that message. And that is my recovery. I have 5 children, only 2 of which have ever seen me drunk. I have 10 grandchildren. None of them have ever seen me drunk. I've lived a long time sober. But that in itself, all she had to do was send back a heart. And it meant everything to me. And so if you're a person who's waiting for a relationship, just stay sober, stay clean, just stay in the rooms. And over time, and this did not happen overnight, trust me. There's so many other things to do, but God owns everything and he wants us to have everything. And I think he's giving me my daughters because he wants me to have the desires of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And I am experiencing those same miracles in my own life. My oldest son, who's now 24, he got to see he got to not see the absentee father, the person that was always wearing the mask, the person that was always absent except when had to be there, and then even then it was just kind of to check the box. He got to see that and witness that. He got to see the expectations I had of perfection on him through his early days that, brought him to his knees, honestly. It really crippled him in many areas. But he is the father of my first grandchild, who's now about 5 months old. And his wife and my grandson just were over here for the last 4 or 5 days visiting and just hanging out with us. And we just put them on the plane to go back home an hour before we started recording here. And that is a miracle of recovery, that my son is willing to come hang out with me, bring his own son to come hang out with me and just play and have fun, go to a baseball game, all the things that are so meaningful to me. And that's a miracle of recovery for me. And I think that is one of the big things, and I can't remember where it is, but families have been healed.
Yes.
Now, what does that look like? It looks different in everybody's life. Maybe that looks like a non-nuclear family, but relationships are strong. Maybe it looks like a nuclear family that has been brought back together and healed in massive and amazing ways. Any other thoughts on that before we move on? I have one more question I want to address in this roundtable today, in this Ask It Basket.
No.
Okay, very good. So, a couple of times it's been referenced, and I want to come back to this, that sobriety and recovery are different animals. And what I'd like to do is pose a question to each of you in your own words, in your own experience, to define the meaning of and define the difference between abstinence, sobriety, recovery. Let's start with you, Robert, and then we'll go to Michelle.
Thank you. Sobriety, in the big book, it says, we feel a man unthinking who thinks sobriety is enough. And being sober occurs in a vacuum. I got sober April 25th of 1986. I have not had a drink, found it necessary to drink or take a mind-altering chemical since that day. No weed, no nothing, just no marijuana maintenance program, nothing. So that occurred instantaneously. Sobriety occurs over time. Sobriety, for me, involves taking all 12 steps, living a recovered life, look at reinventing myself. That's one thing you can't teach. You must experience. I came into the program in AA via Gamblers Anonymous, February 9th of 1986. It was my first day of treatment and a detox. And I tried the easier, softer way, as it says in the big book. I tried to be sober, but not have sobriety. And eventually the pain came back to an unmanageable degree. And I chose, rather than work through that pain in the form of the steps and taking my sponsor's advice and going to meetings and deepening my relationship with God as I understood God, I chose alcohol over that. I thought it would be less painful for me. But since I came back into the program of recovery, and I've been through SAOAGA, NA, AA, you name it, there's not A out there that I don't qualify for in one shape or form. I have found that working the 12 steps, because that's what helped me reclaim my life. Michelle talked about selflessness and self-centeredness. This is the root of all of our problems. And it wasn't, except for the 12 steps, turning my will and my life over the care of God, taking that inventory, being, ready to have God remove the defects of characters, then humbling myself to have him remove the shortcomings, and saying I'm sorry to people, and then living in steps 10, 11, and 12 every day for 14,010 days is my recovery. So to me, being sober or sobriety can happen in a vacuum, but true recovery happens over time. Some are quicker than others, and that's okay. And I never want to wake up knowing that this is, or thinking that this has been a destination. I always want to wake up and think there's another part of the journey today, because I never want to stop experiencing the recovered life I've been given. And that's why I introduce myself as, my name is Robert. I'm a recovered alcoholic, because recovery is so much more than not drinking, not acting out, not gambling, not drugging, all the things that we must do. Recovery is a commitment to a lifestyle that is one day at a time.
Thank you for sharing that spectrum there. Michelle, what are your thoughts on that? Abstinence, sobriety, recovery. What does that look like?
I wrote them down because I function better when I can see. So abstinence to me, in my experience, I have times in my life where drugs and alcohol were not involved. The longer I have stayed in the program, until working the 12 steps, I did not understand why I could take drugs and alcohol out of my system, abstinence, and my life was still unmanageable. I could not understand why this marriage didn't work. I don't understand why I'm still not showing up for my children. I don't understand why I don't like this job anymore. I don't understand. So abstinence to me, I need help understanding what these words even mean. The big book, the 12 steps, don't say, Michelle, here's how you quit drinking and here's how you quit using. It says, Michelle, here's how you understand what's wrong with your thinking, how you feel, and why your life is unmanageable. It gives me direction towards a different spiritual life, where I thought all I had to do was be abstinent from a man, money, all the things that I've said, as long as I don't do this. And I kept shifting. I can look back over 40 plus years now of Michelle's self-will run riot. That is what that is. That's what that it's saying to me in the big book. Michelle, you on life's terms and you managing it, this is how you solve it. Sobriety and recovery to me are also abstinence and sobriety. I'm sober when I don't put substance into my body. Sobriety to me, I put that in the field, right, of I've struggled with drugs and alcohol. I am sober. I'm in a sober state of mind, meaning I am not altering the way I think, which hopefully can help the way I feel. And from that place, I think, right, drugs and alcohol were my problem. Abstinence to me is actually more, it's imperative to me, because if I'm not abstinent from all the things that I'm doing to fill the hole, that is my issue, which brings me to the core root of what is the problem. Oh, how do I be abstinent of Michelle? Because that's the issue. Bam, there's the solution. There is a life moving into recovery. Oh, you mean at the core, the way my roots, right? I need new roots. I need to understand from the very beginning the why, the how, and then what happened. And I love that the 12 steps honor. We've talked, and I talk a lot about, to me, the root is from the time I was a little girl, I adapted a way of thinking. I adapted that it wasn't important for me to follow rules as long as I could get away with breaking them. It's not important for me to really have self-value and honor to my body because somebody's going to take it anyway. So I'll just give it away when I want. It doesn't matter to me that I alter what I come up with my own perception. That's what the big book says. I love the chapter, There's a Solution. I used to think there was no solution for my life. I was barely surviving. And there were days where I didn't even want to do that anymore. And I failed at that too. I'm like, I can't even not be here on my own accord. God doing for me what I can't do for myself. But in pages 18 and 17 of the big book, I love where it references an illness of our sort, and we have come to believe that it is an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, which I do, All are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt, but not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it, there goes all the things that are worthwhile in life go away. It engulfs all whose lives touch sufferers. It brings misunderstanding. I connect to that. Fierce resentment to my core. Financial insecurity all my life. Disgusted friends. I'm brokenhearted when they leave me. Employers. Time and time again, I don't understand why I shift. Warped lives of blameless children. My deepest pain, my children don't love me and they don't want me, or I've hurt them. Sad wives and parents. I've been divorced twice. I have gone long periods of time not having relationships with my mom and my dad, and we can increase the list. I relate to every form of that illness. I have that illness. And if the only way to cure that illness is through the steps to live in recovery, I have to embrace the 12 steps. It says that the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. A common solution means it works for you, it works for me, it works for every woman I'm going to come across. I love the rooms and I love the steps because it validates all of us in our experience. It doesn't say, Michelle, this will only work if you drink and use like you. It doesn't say I had to have a sex addiction like Justin. I have my own, right? It doesn't say that I had to understand Robert's pain with his children, right? He walked out on his children. I didn't leave my children. I just kept, mutilating them while I had them. Whoa. Like, it doesn't say that any of those things have to be the same. But guess what? I laugh. Dark humor saves us. I giggle at those things now because that is not our life. But the pain of what that has brought us, the pain of where that led us, your pain, Justin, and your pain, Robert, are the same as mine. The common solution and the answer is we have a way to meet you in your pain. It promises us that all the things we hated about ourselves become our greatest assets in recovery if we make that a part of our life. Recovery, not if we're abstinent, not just if we're sober and take substance out. Recovery means I am willing to embrace, engulf myself in what these steps give me. And when I give it back, nothing but fruit comes from that. Nothing from it. And today I understand that when I turn my hand, like I open my hands and I turn my life over, exactly like with the set aside prayer, the third step prayer, I just want your will for my life, not mine. The truth is, I thought I would know what I wanted in my life. And every time I tried to put it in my own hands, with all good intention, I messed it up. And today, when I live in recovery, it means I wake up, even if it's anxiety filled, even if it's already fear filled, all I have to do is open my hands and say those words. May your will be done today and not mine. May I love your children well today and not focus on me. Take me and lead my steps with open hands, and everything about my life changes. I get all the gifts I ever wanted and more, and I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was let go. I was in the rooms for a long time and they said, take these suggestions. Michelle hears, right? I only have to do what I want and leave the rest. And I'm grateful for good sponsorship, good mentorship. Robert, who looked at me and said, no, Michelle, there are rules. There are rules to these things. And to someone who was defiant against rules, because her little girl glasses said, your rules, I still get hurt. So I'm going to do it my way, and I don't want to do it your way. I don't want to follow those steps the way you want me to, because you don't understand me and you don't know how to get what I need out of my life. And when I was willing to put on big girl glasses, right, and say, okay, I'm going to try it different, meaning I'll do it your way, whose ever way. Each day I put on those glasses again. I don't want my little girl glasses back. I want to validate that she's protected and safe and loved today. That today, all of what she went through is used for good. That's what the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous give me, is redemption in life to wear both sets of glasses, not bound by shame, not bound by regret. I speak of things in my life, again, not from a place of shame, and I don't elevate them. I get to speak truth today. And the truth is, when I embrace God in my life and let him lead me, I have a better life than I could have ever imagined. And he helps me wear both sets of glasses and reach out to other men and women who have the same sets of glasses that I used to think I was alone in. And he puts us all together and shows us a way of hope and love and forgiveness and grace that we give to other people. And there's not a better way for me to live life.
Beautiful. And as you both were sharing, I was thinking, okay, what am I going to share? And I think I thought I knew the answer to this question and how I was going to walk through it. But as we read and as I've experienced, God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. And that's basically what I'm going to share here. For me, abstinence is the physical. Okay, I don't introduce the substance, the practice into my body, into my mind. The sobriety, the sober is the mental. My mind is changing. My perspective of things are different. And recovery is the spiritual, the connection and the continual growth, improving conscious contact with God as we understand God. And so simple. All of a sudden this whole new light turns on in my mind that I think, oh, I know the answer to that. I'm good with that. And I love how sitting around and talking about these things just brings another presence that is so much bigger than the three of us put together that can just open our minds to so much more. Very good. Before we wrap up, are there any final words of wisdom that either of you want to jump in there before we wrap this conversation up?
No, I'm good.
I'm good as well. Just thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Robert. I hope we do this again in the next month or so and have another conversation like this. I think it's been really cool. To anybody out there in the listening audience, if you have any questions that you'd like us to address, please send an email to reco12pod@gmail.com. That's reco12pod@gmail.com. We'll add those into the list of these questions that we have here and just have these really neat conversations on a regular basis. Remember that I'm going to close this out like I do most other Reco 12 things. Remember, there is one that has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Keep coming back. Work this program because you're worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching